Hosted by u/Valor2s. What movie had the worst ending that you didn't expect? The Devil Inside. The movie was basic horror, everyone dies fair, but it suddenly ends after a car crash and the title card appears listing a website for more info and the movie just ends. Seriously, one of the worst endings imaginable. When I was maybe 8, my aunt took me to see The Boy in the Striped Pajamas in theaters, not realizing at all what it would be about. She didn't read the book, so to her it seemed like a heartwarming story about companionship between two boys and thought the fact that it was page 13 would be okay. Most of the movie was fine. I didn't know what the Holocaust was, but I kinda got the drift. It wasn't until they got into the gas chamber at the end that my child self started bawling BC. I knew they probably died. It was the first non-happy ending I ever saw, and it took me a little while to reconcile what had happened and the fact that some events are just cruel. Gore Verbinski's A Cure for Wellness. I remember when the trailers hit, super minimalist, clearly going for subtle horror, and the great, body horror idea, of a treatment center where people aren't sure what this cure actually is. Then it just turns into this over-the-top story about a count wanting to fuck his daughter, and they have a big action movie ending where they have to fight the count. Law-abiding citizen. It was a solid movie and it fell flat when Jamie Foxx's character still won, despite the Wow movie showing that he was a part of the corrupt system. I recall reading was that the original ending was that Fox was supposed to be arrested, but he changed it and got an ending that made it seem that being a part of the corrupt system is okay. Man in the High Castle. Whole entire series was solid, season 4 a little less but still great, and then a bunch of people from different dimensions just happily stroll through a tunnel into a room with a swastika the size of Texas hanging on the wall and pretend not to notice it. Was just silly. Lucy. Ugh, me and my family were so pissed off by that movie. Scarlett Johansson gets awesome superpowers after being made a drug mule by the same people that violently murdered her boyfriend. Gets revenge, helps some scientists, is about to smash a hot cop, turns into organic computer data on a flash drive. Awesome action sequences and concepts throughout this movie, and it end like cop storms into room. Where is she? Where is Lucy? Text message on his crappy phone everywhere. Cut to black. Fat Girl, Ama Sur, is this French movie I saw that absolutely has the worst ending of all time. It's this movie about this girl Anais, the titular fat girl, and her more attractive older sister Elena, who's a little flirty. Anais wants to have sex just to get it over with. Yada yada yada. Elena meets an Italian boy, she thinks she's ready for sex, she freaks out and backs out. Then the Italian boy proposes to Elena and they have sex. Then the Italian boy backs out of the marriage cause, and Elena's upset. Elena and Anai's mother finds out about all this nonsense and drives them home. They drive home, stop at a rest stop, and an axe murderer emerges from the woods and kills Elena with a brutal face chop, chokes the mother to death, and then rapes Anais. Roll credits. I was a young teen who just wanted to have a nice night out with a young lady, so what else do you do besides see a movie and have your parents pick you up? Well, I got 2 tickets to see Adam Sandler in Click, expecting it to be comically whimsical, but I soon understood that the entire marketing strategy for that movie was to paint an interesting and thought-provoking picture while keeping hidden that 2/3 of the entire movie is just sad and the opposite of what I thought. I left the theater feeling like I got robbed while watching my family die in front of me. I didn't expect much from The Rise of Skywalker, and it still disappointed me. Why was Palpatine surprised that Rey and Kylo were connected by the Force, if Snoke was his puppet and Snoke directly talked about their connection in Episode 8? How did a single hidden Sith planet have the resources and manpower to build a fleet that the First Order's own admirals, masters of an entire sector of the galaxy, admit dwarfs their own? If Force ghosts can now interact with the material world, for example Luke raising his X-Wing from the ocean and Yoda blasting a tree with lightning, why the fuck didn't Luke, Yoda, and Obi-Wan just teleport over to Palpatine's house and fucking yeet him back into the afterlife? Or fuck, even Force Anakin could have done it, thus preserving the prophecy that the sequels just kind of forgot existed. How did Lando round up an entire fleet of random, ragtag ships in less than an hour? Remember that Lando and Poe left at the same time in different directions. Poe went straight to the Sith planet, and Lando would have followed the same path, so all of that travel time should be struck against each other. Lando showed up mid-battle, which means that he magically gathered that entire force in approximately 20 minutes. Further on the point of Lando's magic band of misfits, if the First Order had supreme military control of most of the galaxy, and the Sith fleet dwarfed their own, how did a bunch of random civilian pleasure and cargo ships defeat the Sith fleet? If they could do that, why couldn't they overthrow the First Order? Why did Palpatine route his entire fleet to a planet with only a single fragile control tower allowing travel into orbit? At least the Death Star's tiny weakness was explained as a deliberate sabotage by the designer. Why did Palpatine, the master of intrigue and shadowy plots behind the scenes, announce to the entire galaxy that he had returned and was going to crush them, before he had his armada ready to go in space? Who hid the map to the Sith planet in Palpatine's chambers on the Death Star? It clearly wasn't something he put there himself, because somebody built a magic dagger that acts as a map to find it on the Death Star. Somebody had to have known the map was there and deliberately craft the dagger to show others where it was. Somebody who could speak ancient Sith. No such person exists in canon that I'm aware of. Furthermore, why did somebody make a secret Sith dagger map, the only purpose of which was to lead to another map? What possible purpose could that have served to anybody in universe? How did Kylo return to the Sith planet after being stranded on the wreckage of the Death Star, full of nothing but old, broken TIE fighters that Episode 4 made clear couldn't go to light speed anyway? If force healing is such an easy thing to do, even to the extent of resurrecting the dead, why was Anakin Skywalker so desperate to find a cure for Padme that he would turn to the dark side? He lived at the height of the New Republic. Surely this technique that an untrained desert girl discovered on her own would have been known to the Jedi at the height of their power. And this isn't a plot hole per se, but why did Rey bury Luke's and Leia's sabers on fucking Tatooine? Luke hated Tatooine, his father hated Tatooine, his grandmother was enslaved on Tatooine, and Leia spent her time on the planet as an implied sex slave to a Hutt. The entire family line hated the desert shithole where they experienced so much misery. That's like taking your Jewish grandmother's old necklace and burying it in fucking Auschwitz. The movie and its ending weren't just bad, it's entirely incoherent from a plot perspective. I can suspend disbelief quite a bit when watching magic space wizards, but there's a certain point at which the fictional universe isn't even obeying its own laws and logic. Titanic. Rose spends 4 days on a boat with a guy when she was 16. She spends the next 80 or so years living a full life with a man she loved, married, had children with, explored the world with, etc. But when she dies, her last thought, afterlife, is with a teenager she had a 3-day fling with when she was a child, with not a thought spent on the people she spent her life with. Fuck you, Rose. Fuck you very much. I don't know the title, unfortunately. But the story was about a guy who was sought by police for murder, even though he didn't do it, or perhaps there wasn't even a murder at all. He figured they had no reason to believe him, so he ran. He tried to fake his own death, by pretending to be the driver of a lorry that was pushed off the road, and off a cliff, by the car he was really in. Some clever jumping and switching of cars was involved. Unfortunately, other actual truck drivers saw the truck being driven off the road, and went after the car that did it, to avenge their fellow trucker. The entire film was about this guy fleeing, first from police, then from truck drivers. The whole time I was hoping for a good ending, where everything would be cleared to everyone, nobody was murdered, and nobody had to go to jail. What happened at the end though, was just this guy sitting in his small car, being crushed slowly and purposely by 2 trucks coming from both sides. It was the most frustrating ending to a film I ever saw. Reign of Fire. Great post-apocalypse movie. The angels jumping scene was fan-fucking-tastic. Once that scene is over, the movie goes to absolute shit and makes no sense. The whole magic hour thing was a cop-out. The dragon kept changing size. One scene it's as big or bigger than the castle they live in, then it's small enough to get down narrow alleys. The whole third act seemed like they just phoned it in and couldn't figure out what to do with the story. It had so much potential. The turning was garbage. You think the boy played by Finn Wolfhard is a psychopath or something and it's going to be a yandere story, then it's implied there's a ghost, so I guess it's a ghost story, but then they imply that the nanny is insane towards the end, because she hallucinates a whole outcome where she helps the kids get out of the house. Turns out I guess she was schizophrenic? I don't know. Talking about this movie gives me a migraine. While the entire series hasn't been made into films, The Chronicles of Narnia has the worst ending. There is a train crash, the children get flung into Narnia, they end up witnessing Narnia get destroyed by outside elements who then kill all the creatures, and then they witness the world end, at which point they realize they all died in the train crash and they will never get back to the real world, and the Narnia they knew also no longer exists. I didn't read the full series until fairly recently, though I tried to read all of them at my grand's as she had the complete collection, but I didn't get round to reading the last book, and it's bloody depressing, especially as you realize pretty quickly that they've all died. Slightly different take, but the movie Left Behind, where the ending occurs about 1/3 of the way into the movie. The rapture happens. We know it's the rapture. We know all the innocent children and pure of heart Christians are taken to heaven. No matter how much the characters scream and panic and blunder around, their loved ones aren't coming back. So there's now 2/3 of the movie to go, with literally no plot left. Life, with Jake Gyllenhaal. Standard space station alien movie, right? Wrong. Most disturbing non-horror ending I've seen. Here's how it goes. Jake and another survivor, I forget her name, so let's call her Jill, are rushing to the escape pods in the space station. Jake lures the alien to his pod, the plan being that he will shoot off into deep space with the alien and die, while Jill can return to Earth. Jake and the alien are fighting in the pod, blah, blah, when the alien pins him down and pushes the steering wheel. Suddenly, the light outside Jake's window gets brighter. The alien pushed Jake off course, crashing into Jill's pod. And pushing her into deep space. The endings were reversed in the worst possible way. Jill died screaming and alone, pounding on the window as she slowly suffocated to death. And Jake was eaten alive as his pod crashed onto Earth, giving the alien an entire planet full of people to eat. Edit: to clarify, I enjoyed the ending and the movie, it just freaked me out the first time I saw it. I give Life a solid 7 shrugs out of 10. It's a decent movie, certainly not a masterpiece like Alien, but still worth a watch.